Every person doing manifestation work right now believes the same thing. They believe that wanting something badly enough, visualizing it clearly enough, and asking for it often enough is how you bring it into your life. Millions of people believe this. Courses have been built on it. Books have sold in the tens of millions because of it. And it is wrong. Not partially wrong. Not wrong in a minor technical way that a small adjustment will fix. Structurally wrong. Wrong in a way that means the harder you practice it, the further you move from the result you are trying to reach. Here is the part nobody is saying out loud. When you sit down with your vision board and stare at the life you do not yet have, you are not sending out the frequency of that life. You are sending out the frequency of its absence. You are rehearsing, in precise emotional detail, what it feels like to be a person who does not have those things yet. And that feeling is the signal your life is actually responding to, not the image, not the words, not the intention. You have been practicing lack, carefully, consistently, with real devotion. The techniques you were given were not wrong because they were dishonest. They were wrong because they were incomplete. And that missing piece is not a small footnote. It is the entire mechanism. What you are about to hear will not ask you to want more, or want harder, or believe more fiercely. It will show you exactly what you have been broadcasting, and how to change the signal. Not the vision, the signal beneath it. By the time this is finished, you will not look at your own practice the same way again. Chapter 1. Your vision board is broadcasting poverty. Across every age of human history, a pattern repeats. In every culture that has ever wrestled with the question of why some people prosper while others stay fixed in place, there emerges a small group who seem to carry a different relationship with reality itself. They are not always the ones with the most talent. They are not always the ones who work the hardest. But they understand something about the nature of desire that the majority around them gets exactly backwards. This knowledge has been spoken in marketplaces and monasteries. It has been dressed in the language of religion, then science, then self-help. It gets discovered, forgotten, and found again. The name changes. The core does not. You are listening to this right now because you have been trying to apply this knowledge, and something is still not working. That means you are closer than you think. And it also means there is one specific thing you are doing wrong, something that almost every teacher in this space has quietly missed. You are about to hear what it is. You had a vision board, maybe you still do. You cut the pictures out carefully. The house with the wide front porch, the number in a bank account, the car, the vacation, the version of your life that felt like finally. You arranged them on the board with intention. You looked at it every morning. You spoke the words. You felt or tried to feel the feeling of having it. You did everything you were told to do. And then you waited. Months passed, maybe years. The board faded a little on one edge. The pictures started to curl at the corners, and the life in those pictures stayed exactly where it had always been, somewhere out there, separate from you, waiting on the other side of a door you could not find. That was my life at 24. I had read the books. I had watched the documentaries. I had done the morning routine, written the affirmations, visualized with my eyes closed in a quiet room. I was more committed to manifestation practice than almost anyone I knew. And I was broke in a way that had a specific texture to it, not just empty pockets, but the particular weight of someone who believes they are doing everything right and still getting nowhere. That weight is different from ordinary struggle. Ordinary struggle has a cause you can point to. This kind was worse, because the practice was supposed to be working. Here is the question I want you to hold right now, the one I could not answer for years. What if the practice was working perfectly? Set that question aside for a moment. We will come back to it. There is a woman named Dara. She was 29, working a customer service job that paid just enough to keep her subscribed to the apps and podcasts and courses that promised to change her life. She was not lazy. She was devoted. Every Sunday night she spent an hour in her apartment updating her vision board on her laptop, finding new images, refining the details, getting more specific the way every guru told her to get. She had a folder on her desktop called Proof, filled with screenshots of things she intended to manifest. She talked about her goals the way other people talk about places they have already been. And her bank account sat at the same number, month after month, with a kind of stubborn permanence that started to feel personal. One night she called her older sister and said, "I do not understand why this is not working. I want this so badly. I want it more than anyone I know." Her sister was quiet for a moment. Then she said something that Dara did not fully understand until much later. She said, "I know you want it. I can hear it every time you talk about it. All I hear is how much you want it." Dara did not sleep well that night. She turned the sentence over in her mind the way you turn something over when you are not sure whether it is a gift or a wound. "All I hear is how much you want it." She thought her sister was being dismissive. She thought the comment was about tone, about desperation, about needing to seem more confident. So she went back to her practice with more confidence layered on top. She smiled when she visualized. She used more certain language. She told herself she already had the things she was calling in. But nothing changed. Because Dara's sister had touched the exact center of the problem. And Dara had heard the words without hearing what was underneath them. Bring to mind your actual circumstances in that chapter from 3 years ago as it really was. The things you wanted then. The intentions you set, the prayers you said, the quiet conversations you had with whatever you believe is listening. How many of those things came true? And how many of them are still on the list, the same list, a little longer now, a little more urgent? Not because you stopped trying, but because the trying itself became the proof that you did not have them. Wanting is not attracting. This is the sentence the entire self-help industry has built a billion-dollar misunderstanding on top of. Wanting is a signal, and the signal wanting broadcasts is the absence of the thing you want. Every time you sit down to visualize your dream house from the position of someone who does not have a dream house, the dominant signal going out is not the image on the screen behind your eyes. It is the feeling in your chest while you look at it. That feeling, more often than not, is some version of not yet, some version of far away, some version of I hope this works. That signal is the real broadcast. And whatever force you believe is responding to your inner state, whether you call it the universe, your subconscious mind, the reticular activating system in your brain, or simple cause and effect, it responds to the signal, not the image. Your vision board is a picture of your desire, and desire, by definition, is the experience of not having something. So every morning when you stood in front of it and reached for the feeling of your future, what you were actually doing was rehearsing the experience of lack. Precisely, diligently, with full commitment, day after day. The practice was working perfectly. It just wasn't working for you. It was working against you. And the cruelest part is that the more sincerely you practiced, the more firmly you wired in the frequency you were trying to escape. This is why people who try manifestation for 2 or 3 years often feel more behind than when they started. Not because they did nothing, but because they practiced the feeling of wanting something they couldn't reach over and over with focused attention, and then watched their outer world reflect that feeling back with complete accuracy. A radio tower does not play music because of the pictures painted on its side. It plays music because of the frequency it transmits. You can hang every vision of your dream life on that tower. You can paint it in full color, add details, get specific. But if the transmitting frequency is lack, what plays out of every speaker in your life is the experience of lack. You have heard versions of this idea before. You have probably heard people say that you have to feel it as if it is already real. That instruction is not wrong, but it is so incomplete it becomes dangerous. It does not tell you what you are actually feeling when you think you are feeling having. Most people who follow that instruction spend 10 minutes visualizing their future and 35 minutes afterward living in the same mental state they started in. 10 minutes of performed certainty sitting on top of hours of ambient worry changes nothing. The dominant signal is still worry. The question is not whether you are visualizing correctly in the moment of practice. The question is what emotional signal your life is running on the other 23 hours of the day. In a later section, we turn toward an argument about positive thinking that cuts across the standard story. When you see it, the contradiction will resolve in a way that permanently changes how you approach your inner state. But right now, there is something more immediate to understand. The vision board at 24 was not a failure of effort. It was not a failure of belief. It was a perfect result. I asked for the experience of wanting and I received it in abundance. Not the house, not the account balance, the experience of wanting them, specifically, precisely, exactly the way I practiced. The mistake is not that manifestation does not work. The mistake is that it works on the signal you are actually sending, not the one you think you are sending. What signal are you actually sending? Chapter 2. Wanting is the frequency of not having. Wanting something does not mean you are moving toward it. Almost every person who has studied manifestation believes the opposite. They believe that wanting something hard enough, picturing it clearly enough, feeling it urgently enough, is the engine that pulls it closer. That belief is not just incomplete, it is structurally backwards. Once you hear what wanting actually signals to the deepest layer of your psychology, you will not be able to unhear it. The discomfort of that recognition is the point. On the other side of that discomfort is the correction. And the correction is what this chapter is built to hand you. That question from the last chapter is still open. What signal are you actually sending? You may have turned it over through the night. You may have thought the signal was hope or desire or focused intention. This chapter is going to show you something more precise, more honest, and considerably more useful than any of those answers. Let us start with the radio. Picture an old analog tuner, not digital, not algorithmic, the kind where you move a dial by hand and the needle drags across a band of frequencies. When you land on the right station, the sound sharpens. Voices become words. Music becomes music. When you are between stations, you get static, not silence. Static. Noise that sounds like something but carries nothing. Your inner state works the same way. Every emotional posture you hold is a frequency, not in a mystical sense, in a psychological sense. The way you feel when you think about money, about success, about where you are right now in life, that feeling is a signal. It shapes your attention. It determines what opportunities your brain registers and which ones it screens out. It influences how you show up in rooms, how you speak when the stakes are high, how you act when a door is halfway open. The feeling is not decorative. The feeling is functional, and wanting is a frequency. Specifically, wanting is the frequency of not having. Here is what that means. The emotion of wanting requires an object that is absent. You cannot want something you already possess. You do not want the phone in your hand right now because you already have it. Wanting, by definition, is the feeling generated by the gap between where you are and where the thing you desire lies. It is a gap signal. It broadcasts lack. Now hold that for a moment. Go back to your actual circumstances in that chapter from 3 years ago as it really was. Not where you hoped to be, where you actually were. Think about the things you wanted then. The income level, the apartment, the kind of work, the sense of stability. Were you wanting them hard? Were you visualizing them, writing them down, pinning them to something, telling yourself every morning that they were coming? Where are those things now? Some arrived. But the core wanting, did it go away? Or did the wanting simply move to the next thing the moment the last thing landed? Because if the wanting moved, that is not evidence that wanting works. That is evidence that wanting is a permanent station you are living on. The channel never changes. Only the content does. That is the open wound at the center of desire-based manifestation culture. The culture tells you to want more, to want bigger, to get excited about what is coming. It sells you vision boards and morning routines and scripting practices, all organized around the emotion of wanting. And the people teaching it are not liars. Most of them believe what they are teaching, but they have misread the mechanism. They have confused the desire for the destination with the feeling of already being there. Those two feelings are not on the same frequency. They are on opposite ends of the dial. There is a man named Raphael who learned this the hard way. He was 27, working in logistics, making decent money but never quite enough. He had been doing everything the books told him. He had a vision board above his desk with the exact salary number he wanted, a picture of the neighborhood he wanted to live in, a photo of the car he drove in his imagination every morning during his 10-minute visualization. He did this for 2 years. He wanted that life with a focus that bordered on obsession. 2 years later, his salary had barely moved. His apartment was the same. The car was still a photo. He came to believe manifestation was nonsense. What he should have concluded was that his signal was wrong. Raphael was not sending a signal of having. He was sending a signal of not having yet. Every morning when he sat in front of that board and felt the pull toward that life, the dominant feeling beneath the visualization was hunger. And hunger is a lack signal. Hunger tells your nervous system, this is missing. It sharpens your awareness of the gap, not the destination. His brain, tuned to that frequency every single morning for 2 years, became extraordinarily good at one thing, perceiving the distance between where he was and where he wanted to be. Perception shapes action. And action shaped by the feeling of lack tends to produce more evidence of lack. The board worked perfectly. It just worked on the frequency he was actually broadcasting, not the one he thought he was. This is the vision board problem. And it is closer to your own experience than you might want to admit right now. What emotion do you feel when you look at the thing you want most? Be honest. Not the surface emotion, the performance of hope you put on because hope feels better than fear. The signal beneath the intention. Is it warmth? Is it recognition, like greeting something you already own? Or is it longing? Is it the specific ache of something not yet yours? Longing and ownership are not the same frequency. They are not even neighbors on the dial. One is rooted in absence. One is rooted in presence. Your psychology cannot tell the difference between a visualization of abundance and a performance of wanting it. It reads the feeling, not the picture. This is not a spiritual claim. This is how attention works. Neuroscience calls it selective attention and confirmation bias, and a dozen other clinical names. What they all point to is the same thing. You perceive what your emotional state primes you to perceive. If your dominant emotional signal is lack, the feeling of the thing being out of reach, your brain becomes a precision instrument for detecting evidence of that lack. The opportunity that required confidence, you walked past it. The conversation that needed you to behave as though you already belonged in the room, you shrunk in it. The decision that required you to act from sufficiency rather than desperation, you made the desperate choice. Not because you are broken, because you were on the wrong frequency. Here is the part that makes this especially hard to see from inside it. Wanting feels like motivation. It feels like drive, like ambition, like forward momentum. The culture rewards people who want loudly, who talk about their goals constantly, who wear their hunger as a badge. So you never question whether the wanting itself might be the problem. You just want harder. Desire without the felt sense of possession is a prayer for continued lack. Read that again slowly. It is the spine of this entire chapter. Every visualization, every affirmation, every intention-setting ritual you perform, if the feeling underneath it is wanting, the signal you are broadcasting is the absence of the thing you want. And your psychology will organize your behavior around confirming that signal, because that is what psychology does. It proves itself right. The corrective mechanism is not to stop desiring things. That would be both impossible and useless. The correction is more precise and more surprising than simply wanting less. Before long, we turn toward an argument about the feeling of success, specifically about when that feeling is supposed to arrive that cuts across the standard story. After that really registers, it reshapes how you act before you have any external result to justify the change. That is Chapter 3's territory. That is where the practical shift begins. For now, the work of this chapter is recognition. Not guilt, not self-correction, not a new technique, just honest recognition. You have been taught that wanting is the engine. You have been living on that frequency. And the static in your financial life, the gap between where you are and where you have been trying to go, is not proof that manifestation does not work. It is proof that it does. It just worked on the signal you were actually sending. What would it feel like to already have the thing you want most, not someday, not when the conditions are right, but right now in your body as a felt fact? Chapter 3. The emotion that actually moves money. Gratitude is not a feeling. It is a frequency your brain uses to decide what is real. That sounds like motivational filler, the kind of thing printed on mugs sold at airport bookstores. It is not. It is a description of how your nervous system allocates attention, filters information, and determines what opportunities you notice. And here is where it cuts. Most people who practice gratitude are doing it in a way that locks in their own scarcity rather than loosening it. They are grateful for what they have while secretly transmitting the signal of everything they lack. The brain hears the signal beneath the words. It always does. So before you spend another morning writing in a gratitude journal and wondering why the numbers in your account never move, you need to understand what is actually happening inside your head, and what small but precise shift turns a decoration into a mechanism. That question from the last chapter is still sitting in your body right now, whether you realize it or not. What would it feel like to already have the thing you want most? Not someday. Not when the conditions are right. Right now as a felt fact. Most people read that question and feel a small flicker of something warm. Then the skeptical mind arrives, reminds them of their bank balance, and the flicker goes out. That flicker was the signal. What snuffed it was the frequency of lack reasserting dominance. The entire problem lives in that moment. The entire solution does too. Here is the open loop this chapter is built around. There is a specific mechanism inside your brain, a structure with a name and a documented function, that explains why two people can say the exact same affirmation and have completely opposite outcomes. One person says it and their life slowly reorganizes around it. The other says it for 6 months and nothing changes except their frustration deepens. Same words. Same consistency. Completely different results. The difference is not discipline. It is not belief in the abstract. It is something biological. Understanding it will change how you use every tool you already have. Hold that question. The answer is coming, but not yet, because you need to feel the full weight of what is happening before the mechanism makes sense. Remember your actual circumstances in that chapter from 3 years ago, as it really was. Not in terms of income or career, but in terms of how you felt when you thought about money. Was there a tightness in your chest? A low hum of anxiety you had learned to call normal? Most people in their late 20s carry financial fear like background noise. The way you stop hearing a highway near your apartment after the first week. But it is still there, shaping your sleep, shaping your decisions, shaping the way you speak when money comes up in conversation. That is not a character flaw. That is a trained neural pattern. And the reason it matters is this. Your brain cannot distinguish between a pattern it learned at 22 and a pattern that is currently true. It treats old emotional wiring as present reality, which means if your dominant emotional signal around money is fear dressed up as aspiration, then all the visualization in the world is simply reinforcing that fear with brighter images. This is where Diane comes in. Diane was 31 and living in a 1-bedroom apartment in Columbus, Ohio, working as a contracts coordinator for a mid-sized logistics company. She made $54,000 a year. She had read the books, made the vision boards, written the morning pages, said the affirmations. She was not lazy. She was not faithless. She wanted more, genuinely and deeply. And that wanting was the exact problem she could not see. Every morning she sat with her journal and wrote about the life she was trying to reach. She described the apartment she wanted, the income she wanted, the freedom she wanted. She used words like grateful and ready and open, but underneath every sentence was the signal she never wrote down. The signal her body was broadcasting even as her pen moved across the page. The signal was, I do not have this yet. The signal was, this is the distance between where I am and where I want to be. Her brain received that signal every morning at 8 o'clock with a cup of coffee and treated it as gospel. 90 days later, Diane's external circumstances had not dramatically changed. She did not win money. Nobody handed her an opportunity. What changed was subtler and more durable. She had learned to sit with the feeling of already having, not imagining it from the outside like watching a film, but inhabiting it from the inside like remembering something real. Within those 90 days, she noticed a job posting she would have scrolled past before. She sent an email she would have been too afraid to send before. She negotiated something she had never once negotiated in her professional life. 14 months later, she was earning $81,000 in a role she had essentially designed by being willing to ask for it. The vision board did not move her forward. The emotional state she practiced did. Now let that settle for a moment before we name what actually happened. There is a small cluster of neurons near the base of your brain called the reticular activating system. Think of it as your brain's attention gatekeeper, its filter for what gets through to conscious awareness. Every second, your senses deliver roughly 11 million pieces of information to your nervous system. Your conscious mind can process about 40. The reticular activating system decides which 40 make the cut. It does not make that decision randomly. It decides based on what your dominant emotional state has taught it to prioritize. If your dominant state is scarcity, the filter is calibrated for threats, for evidence of lack, for proof that your fears are justified. Your brain is not being pessimistic. It is being efficient. It is showing you what you have told it matters most through the consistent emotional frequency you broadcast. Here is the reversal. When you feel the emotion that corresponds to already having a thing, not imagine it from a distance but inhabit it as a present physical state, the reticular activating system recalibrates. It begins filtering for evidence that confirms that state. This is not magic. It is the same mechanism that causes you to notice every red car on the road the week after you buy a red car. The cars were always there. Your filter changed. Apply that same principle to financial opportunity, to conversations, to ideas, to the precise moment someone mentions something that could alter your trajectory, and you begin to understand why two people standing in the same room at the same networking event leave with completely different experiences of what was possible there. This is what the manifestation culture gets catastrophically wrong. It teaches you to want harder, want with more clarity, want with more visualization, want with more emotional intensity. But wanting is a statement of absence. Every time you access the emotional state of wanting, your reticular activating system hears, "This thing is not here," and it filters your world accordingly, quietly and efficiently delivering you proof that the thing is not here. Gratitude in advance is the technical name for the antidote, but that phrase can make it sound decorative. Strip the decoration away. What you are actually doing is practicing the emotional state of completion before completion arrives. You are teaching your nervous system to treat the outcome as current, not future. You are feeding the reticular activating system a different instruction. The brain acts on states it believes are real, not on wishes it classifies as future. Read that again slowly in your own voice. It carries the weight of everything this chapter has been building toward. A wish tells your brain, "This belongs to tomorrow." A felt state tells your brain, "This is present." And your brain, that extraordinary and obedient organ, begins filtering the world to match whichever of those two instructions arrives with greater emotional conviction. You do not have to understand neuroplasticity at a cellular level to use this. You have to understand one thing practically. The signal beneath your intention determines what your brain helps you find. Now close the loop. That question from earlier, the one about why two people can say the same affirmation and get opposite results. You already know the answer. One of them is saying the words from a state of completion. The other is saying the words from a state of wanting. Their reticular activating systems are receiving two different instructions from the signal beneath the sentence, and they each go out into the world with filters built for completely different outcomes. Same words, same consistency, opposite lives. It was never about the affirmation. It was always about the emotional frequency generating the signal beneath it. Later in this book, you will encounter something that directly contradicts what most people believe about taking action toward a financial goal. Once that becomes real to you, it reshapes the order in which you do almost everything. But right now there is something practical. Tonight, before sleep, Do not list what you are grateful for. Instead, sit with this question until you feel an answer in your body rather than just your thoughts. What does it feel like to be the person who already has the thing, not the person chasing it, the person who has it, who has had it long enough to feel ordinary about it? Stay in that feeling until it stops being a performance and starts being a posture. That shift, from performance to posture, from wishing outward to inhabiting inward, is where the reticular activating system takes its new instructions. Diane did not change her circumstances first and feel better second. She changed the felt signal first, and the circumstances followed the filter. The question is not what you want. The question is what you are willing to feel before you have it. Chapter 4. Why Affirmations Backfire After Midnight. Something is being bled out from your life while you stay busy. It is not dramatic enough to notice. It does not announce itself. It does not leave a mark on the day. But every morning you repeat words you do not feel. Every night you whisper intentions your body quietly refuses. You are not staying neutral. You are moving backward. The cost is not this week's missed opportunity. The cost compounds the same way debt compounds, silently, reliably, invisibly. Each affirmation that creates dissonance inside you does not simply fail to work. It teaches your nervous system that the gap between where you are and where you want to be is permanent. And a nervous system that believes the gap is permanent will defend that gap. It will protect it. It will find evidence for it everywhere you look. That mechanism has a name. And once you understand it, the practice you thought was helping you will reveal exactly why it has been holding you in place. That question from the last chapter has not left the air yet. What you are willing to feel before you have it. Sit with that for just one moment before we move forward. This chapter is the answer made practical. Nadia was 26 when she started the practice. She had a journal, a routine, a morning alarm set to 5:45. Every day before the apartment was warm, before the coffee finished, she would sit at her kitchen table and say the same things to herself. Out loud, with intention. I am financially free. I attract wealth easily. Money flows to me in unexpected ways. She did this for 11 months. She was consistent in a way most people are not, and she deserved credit for that. But at the end of those 11 months, she had less money than when she started. Not dramatically less, quietly less. The kind of less that happens when nothing moves and life keeps costing what it costs. What went wrong for Nadia was not her commitment. It was not her words. It was the space between the words and what her body understood to be true. There is a structure to the human mind that most manifestation advice completely ignores. The conscious mind speaks in language. It processes affirmations as sentences. It can hold a sentence in place, repeat it, believe it is doing something important. But the part of you that actually runs your financial behavior, the part that decides whether to negotiate your salary, whether to send the invoice, whether to believe an opportunity is real or just another trap, that part does not speak in sentences. It speaks in feeling, in accumulated experience, in pattern. And here is what nobody in the desire-based manifestation world wants to tell you. When the sentence and the feeling disagree, the feeling wins. Every time, without exception. Think about that for a moment. The feeling always wins. When you say, I am financially free, and your body registers $42 left until the end of the month, your nervous system does not update toward the sentence. It uses the sentence as a mirror. And in that mirror, it sees the distance between what you said and what it knows. That distance does not feel like possibility. It registers as a lie. And a lie delivered to yourself, repeatedly, with sincerity, does not build belief. It builds a very specific kind of exhaustion. the exhaustion of someone who keeps trying something that keeps not working. This is the mechanism the previous chapters were circling. The frequency of lack does not come from wanting bad things. It comes from the signal beneath the intention. You can set an intention for wealth while broadcasting the signal of someone who has never had it, will never have it, and knows it. And the signal, not the sentence, is what shapes what you notice, what you act on, what you attract into your actual life. Here is the open loop I want to plant before we go further. There is a specific moment, a specific late-night hour, when the damage from poorly constructed affirmations does the most harm. We will get to exactly when and exactly why before this chapter ends. Hold that question. First, the parable of Nadia needs its resolution, because Nadia did not quit. What she did instead was something she almost did not do. She told the truth, not the whole truth. Just a slightly larger truth than the one she had been telling. Instead of, "I am financially free," she said, "I am someone who is learning what financial freedom actually requires, and I am farther along than I was last year." Her body did not reject that sentence. It could find evidence for it. It did not feel like a lie. It felt like a step. And from that step, something changed, not in the universe, not in some cosmic ledger, but in her nervous system. It stopped defending the gap. It started looking for the next true statement it could make. Within 3 months, Nadia had renegotiated her freelance rate. Within 6, she had saved more than she had in the previous 2 years combined. The sentence did not do that. The belief the sentence made possible did. Now, here is the principle that Nadia stumbled into without a name for it. It is called bridging, and it is the difference between affirmations that create cognitive dissonance and affirmations that create genuine forward motion. A flat affirmation states a destination as though you are already there. I am rich. I have everything I need. Money comes easily to me. These sentences are grammatically present tense, but experientially they are lies, and your body knows it. The subconscious does not care about your grammar. It cares about your evidence. And when the evidence contradicts the claim becomes proof of the opposite. You feel the gap. You reinforce the gap. You deepen the frequency of lack even while trying to escape it. A bridged statement tells the truth about where you are and points in the direction you are moving. It does not demand your body accept something it cannot yet feel as real. It does not ask you to pretend. It asks you to be honest about the motion. This is the exercise. Right now, wherever you are listening to this, think of one affirmation you have used before. Just one. Notice how it feels when you say it, not how it sounds, how it feels. Notice if there is a small resistance, a quiet voice somewhere that says yes, but that voice is not your enemy. That voice is your nervous system being accurate. The goal is not to silence it. The goal is to meet it. Here is what a rewrite looks like in practice. Take the flat affirmation, "I am wealthy." The bridge version becomes, "I am building real evidence that wealth is something I can create, and I can name 3 specific things I have already done that prove it." Your body can say yes to that. It does not have to lie. It does not have to suppress the yes but voice. It just has to take one honest step and find it is still standing. Take the flat affirmation, "Money flows to me easily." The bridge version becomes, "I am getting better at recognizing and acting on financial opportunities, and I am less afraid of them than I was 2 years ago." Feel the difference. That second sentence does not broadcast lack, but it also does not ask you to believe something your nervous system will immediately reject. It is navigable. It is real. Take the flat affirmation, "I attract financial abundance." The bridge version becomes, "I am someone whose relationship with money is improving in specific ways I can point to, and I am willing to keep building the evidence." Notice the word willing. That word is doing crucial work. It connects you to the question from the chapter before this one. Not what you want, what you are willing to feel. Mirror moment. Call up to the story you were living with around money at the start of that stretch without softening it. Not in a painful way, with curiosity. Think about what you believed about your own earning capacity. Think about one thing you are doing now financially that the version of you from 3 years ago would not have believed possible. It does not have to be large. It just has to be true. That true thing is your bridge material. That is the evidence your nervous system will accept. That is the starting point of an affirmation that does not quietly work against you. Now, the late-night question, the open loop from earlier. There is a reason this chapter is named what it is named. Midnight is not metaphor. The brain state you inhabit between roughly 10:30 at night and 1 in the morning, in the moments when you are tired but not yet asleep, is the state where your defenses are lowest and your emotional honesty is highest. Psychologists call this hypnagogia, the threshold state. What you feel about yourself in that state is not filtered through the optimism you maintain during daylight. It is raw. It is what your body actually believes. And if the last thing you told yourself before that state was an affirmation your nervous system rejected, the threshold carries that rejection. It does not carry the sentence. It carries the feeling the sentence produced, which was, "This is not true about me. I tried again. I failed again. The gap is still there." That feeling, not the words, is what your brain consolidates during sleep. That is what gets reinforced. That is what you wake up with, slightly heavier than the day before in a way you can never quite name. This is why affirmations backfire after midnight. Not because the hour is cursed, because the hour is honest. And honesty will always overwrite performance. Down the line in this book, we turn toward an argument about the role of emotion in financial decision-making that cuts across the standard story. When that idea snaps into focus, it reshapes what you do the morning after a hard financial day. For now, the principle is this: an affirmation the body cannot believe does not land neutrally. It lands as evidence against you. It deepens the very resistance you were trying to dissolve. The repair is not louder repetition. The repair is a smaller, truer sentence, one your nervous system can find its footing on. One real step taken in full honesty is worth more than a year of beautiful words spoken over a body that does not believe a single one of them. The question is not whether you deserve the destination. The question is whether you can find a sentence about your life that is true enough to build from. Chapter 5. The subconscious does not speak English. Positive thinking does not work the way you were taught. That sounds like an attack on everything you have tried. You are already preparing to disagree. Do not dismiss it yet. Because the reason positive thinking fails most people is not that they failed to think positively enough. It is that they were sending their messages in a language the deeper mind simply does not read. You have been shouting instructions through a door to someone who does not speak your language. Then concluding the room on the other side must be empty. The room is not empty. The problem was never your belief. The problem was your translation. That question, what language does the subconscious actually speak, is what this chapter will answer. By the time you reach the end of it, the way you approach every visualization practice, every intention, every quiet moment you spend trying to call something toward you will feel structurally different. Not spiritually different, structurally. The question from the last chapter was whether you could find a sentence about your life that is true enough to build from. That sentence matters, but a sentence is still a sentence. Words arranged in order, delivered to the conscious mind, processed by the part of you that also argues with strangers online and makes grocery lists and recites affirmations in a bathroom mirror at 6:47 in the morning. The conscious mind receives language. The deeper mind receives something else entirely. Think about what happens when you remember a moment that hurt you. Not a fact about the moment itself. You do not remember it as a sentence. You remember a texture, the specific quality of light in the room, the feeling in your chest before the words were spoken, the way time seemed to hold still for a second and then drop. The body responds. Your jaw tightens. Your breath shortens. That is not language doing that. That is imagery. That is sensation. That is the subconscious receiving exactly what it was designed to receive. Now think about your last affirmation session. Probably words. Probably a sentence you repeated until it felt either hollow or slightly embarrassing. I am wealthy. I am abundant. Money flows to me easily. Your conscious mind processed those words. Your subconscious filed them in the same drawer as fictional dialogue because they arrived with no sensation, no scene, no felt reality attached to them. The signal beneath the words was absence, effort, wanting. And the subconscious, which does not evaluate language but only records frequency, logged what was actually present, not what the words were claiming. This is the mechanism that has been working against you. There is a woman named Carla who grew up in a house where money was a source of shame. Not poverty exactly, but the specific middle-class shame of never quite having enough while pretending otherwise. Her parents never argued about money in front of her. They never said, "We can't afford that." Instead, there were tight smiles at checkout counters and a particular silence in the car after dinner at a restaurant that cost more than expected. Carla learned, somewhere around age 9, that money was something you managed quietly and never quite mastered. She carried that education into adulthood without ever examining it. In her late 20s, Carla found manifestation. She made a vision board. She wrote affirmations. She visualized the apartment she wanted, the income she wanted, the freedom she wanted. She meant every word, and every single session ended with a feeling she never named but always felt, a low, persistent hum of wishing, which is just another word for not having. She was doing the practice correctly by every standard the books described. And every session was broadcasting in the only language the subconscious understands that the apartment and the income and the freedom were somewhere else. Out there. Not here. Carla is not unusual. Carla is most people who have ever tried this. A little later, you will hear a point about the role of emotion in manifestation that cuts across the standard story. Once that lands, it alters how you practice it for the rest of your life. For now, understand this. The subconscious mind processes 4 things with extraordinary fidelity: images, visceral physical sensations, emotional states, and scenes, meaning sequences of imagery with you present inside them. You can remember this as IVAS. Image, visceral sense, emotion, scene. Not a formula for magic. A description of how the deeper mind has always worked, long before anyone used the word manifestation. Image comes first because the subconscious is primarily visual in structure. When you close your eyes and imagine something, the visual cortex activates in patterns nearly identical to actual perception. The brain does not cleanly distinguish between a vivid imagined scene and a real one, not at the level of neural response. This is not a metaphor. It is documented neuroscience. A vividly constructed image of financial ease is not pretending. It is rehearsing. It is creating a prior experience that the subconscious can treat as data. But image alone is not enough. A photograph is not immersive. The second element is visceral sense, the physical sensation that would accompany the reality you are building, not the feeling of wanting it. The feeling of being inside it, the specific weight of calm in your shoulders when a bill arrives and you already know it is handled, the particular quality of breathing deeply without a background current of financial anxiety tightening your chest. These are not grand feelings. They are precise ones. The precision is what makes them register. What does your body feel like when you are not worried about money? That is not a rhetorical question. Sit with it. Because if you cannot answer it from sensation rather than from words, then you have never given your subconscious a real signal to work from. The third element is emotion, and this is where most people in the manifestation space make the mistake of going large instead of going true. Enormous joy, overwhelming gratitude, ecstatic excitement. These are not wrong. But they are not sustainable, and more importantly, they are not specific. The emotions that register most deeply in the subconscious are the quiet ones: settled certainty, steady ease, the ordinary feeling of someone who is not worried because there is nothing to be worried about. You have felt that feeling before about something, somewhere in your life. Maybe it was not money. Maybe it was a skill you developed, or a relationship you stopped being anxious about, or a morning when, for reasons you could not explain, everything just felt solid. That feeling, transplanted into the financial scene you are building, that is the emotional frequency you are trying to send. The fourth element is seen, not a snapshot, a sequence. You moving through a moment with the imagery and the sensation and the emotion woven together into something continuous. You sitting at a table, opening a laptop, looking at numbers that make sense, breathing without tightening. You talking to someone about work you chose because it suited you, not because you needed the money. You in a grocery store, not calculating in your head. These are not dramatic. That is intentional. The subconscious is not impressed by drama. It is impressed by repetition. And it is most accepting of signals that feel ordinary enough to be real. Look back at the version of you waking up each morning in that chapter from 3 years ago as it really was. Not conceptually, physically. Where were you sitting the most? What was the texture of your average Tuesday morning? What was the first financial thought that arrived when you woke up? Because who you were 3 years ago was, in part, a product of the scenes your subconscious had rehearsed over and over before that. The anxiety that walked in with you every morning did not come from nowhere. It came from a repeated internal signal, mostly unconscious, mostly unchallenged. You were practicing a scene. You just did not know you were practicing. This is the hardest part to accept because it means the work is not affirmation. It is construction. Building a subconscious scene that registers as real requires slowness, specificity, and repetition. Not 10 seconds of visualization before you check your phone. Not a vague sense of wanting better things. Actual construction of an actual scene, in actual detail, inhabited from inside rather than observed from outside. The difference matters enormously. Watching yourself in a scene from a distance is not immersion. That is still observation, still separation, still the frequency of not being there. You need to build the scene from behind your own eyes, feeling the temperature of the room, hearing whatever ambient sound would be present, sitting in the body of someone for whom this is already normal. This is what the vision board got wrong for you, and for most people who made one. It was a collection of images you observed from outside, pretty pictures of things you did not have. The frequency underneath every glance at that board was the gap between the images and your life. You were not practicing having, you were practicing wanting. And the subconscious, which does not speak English and does not evaluate your stated intentions, recorded exactly what was broadcast. The board did not fail. It worked perfectly. It just worked on the signal that was actually present, not the one you thought you were sending. Programming what you actually want requires you to speak in the subconscious's native language. Vivid scene, felt sensation, emotional precision. Repeated immersion until the scene stops feeling constructed and starts feeling like memory. You already know how to do this. You do it every time you dread something. You rehearse it in sensation-rich detail, and your body responds as if it is already happening. The only question now is whether you will do it deliberately, in the direction you choose. What would it feel like to wake up and have the financial anxiety already gone? Chapter 6. Your identity is blocking the download. The previous section put a question on the table and it is still in the room. What would it feel like to wake up and have the financial anxiety already gone? Hold that feeling for a second. Here is the thing most people do not notice. You probably cannot hold it for very long before something pulls you back. Something quiet and familiar and old says, that is not really for you. You do not even hear it as a voice. You feel it as a ceiling. Every single day you are trying to attract money from below that ceiling. The signal you are sending out is not what you wrote on your vision board. It is not the number in your journal. It is the identity underneath all of it. And that identity is broadcasting on a frequency that cancels everything you are consciously trying to create. The money is not late. The money is not being withheld. It is being deflected, not by the universe, by you, and not even by the part of you that you know. Here is the open question this chapter is going to carry for a while. Where did your ceiling come from? You did not install it yourself. Nobody sat down at age 8 and decided to be limited. But something got said in you early, so early you cannot find the seam where it entered. It feels like truth. It feels like just the way things are. That is the most dangerous kind of belief because you do not defend it. You simply live inside it and call it reality. Return to the version of you waking up each morning in that chapter from 3 years ago as it really was. Not where you hoped to be, where you actually were. Think about how you felt about money then, the specific, tight, low-grade hum of financial stress that lived somewhere behind your sternum. Now ask yourself honestly, has that feeling changed or have only the numbers changed a little? For most people listening right now, the feeling has not moved. The income went up a bit. The anxiety adjusted to match. The ceiling held. That is not a coincidence. Money stories are not dramatic things. They are not big theatrical memories of poverty or loss, though sometimes they come from those places. More often they are quiet. They are the sentence your father never finished at dinner when the bills came out. They are the tone your mother used when someone else had something nice. They are the small arithmetic of who got praised and who got dismissed, and what that taught you about what people like you are allowed to have. By the time you are 12 years old, you have already built an elaborate internal model of your financial ceiling, and you have done it without a single conscious thought. Here is something almost no one in the manifestation space talks about directly. The model is not just a belief. It is an identity. An identity is stickier than belief. You can change a belief in an afternoon if someone gives you the right information, but identity does not update on information. Identity updates on experience, which means every vision board, every affirmation, every scripting session you do from inside an identity that does not match the outcome, you are not attracting the outcome. You are reinforcing the distance between where you are and where the outcome lives. You are broadcasting the gap. This is where a man named Troy found himself one Tuesday morning in October. He was sitting at his kitchen table with a notebook and a question his therapist had assigned him as almost an afterthought. The question was simple: write down the first memory you have that involved money. Troy sat with that for probably 4 minutes before he wrote anything. What came up surprised him. It was not a moment of poverty. It was a birthday. He was 9 years old. His uncle had given him $40, more cash than Troy had ever held in his own hands. He remembered the weight of it. He remembered feeling powerful and giddy. And then he remembered going downstairs and hearing his mother on the phone saying they needed to borrow it. Not asking him, telling someone else already decided. Troy did not lose the $40 to cruelty. He lost it to necessity. His mother was not a villain. The family needed what they needed. But what Troy learned in that moment and cemented in 100 smaller moments after it was a very specific lesson. Money that comes to you does not stay. It passes through. You are a temporary holder, not an owner. People who need more will always have a claim on what you have. Having money makes you responsible for other people's problems. He did not think any of those words at 9 years old, but his nervous system registered all of them. By the time Troy was 31, he had a decent job, a side income he had built carefully over 2 years, and a genuine practice of visualization and intention setting he took seriously. And yet every time his savings account reached a certain number, somewhere around $4,000, something happened. A car repair. An unexpected expense. A loan to a friend he could not say no to. He told himself he was unlucky. He told himself money just moved in cycles. He never once considered that he was fulfilling a story written by a Tuesday afternoon when he was 9. That journaling session broke the ceiling open. Not because writing the memory healed it, but because seeing it named the mechanism. And once you name the mechanism, it stops running silently in the background. Now here is where the open question lands. The ceiling did not come from nowhere. Yours did not either. The specific shape of your ceiling, what number it sits at, what emotional trigger activates it, what form the release tends to take, all of that was designed by the data your early life gave you. The signal beneath your intention is not your vision board. It is every piece of data your nervous system collected before you were old enough to evaluate it. This is why the manifestation mistake is so persistent. The desire-based manifestation culture tells you to want harder, to feel the feeling, to see the vision. But if your identity ceiling is set below the outcome you are visualizing, the wanting itself becomes the problem. Wanting is a signal of not having. Every time you reach for the vision from a place of want, you are reinforcing the frequency of lack, not the frequency of receiving. You are sending your subconscious the most precise possible message. I do not have this yet. And your subconscious, which is an extraordinarily faithful servant, goes right on confirming that for you. Faithful servant. That phrase matters. Your subconscious is not working against you. It is working perfectly. It is executing the identity file it was given. When Troy's account hit $4,000, his subconscious did not sabotage him out of malice. It kept him safe inside the boundaries of the identity it had been given. Having more than a certain amount was dangerous in Troy's original data set. More money meant more claims on it. So the subconscious kept him in the range that felt survivable. That felt in the strangest possible sense like home. You cannot manifest above your identity ceiling. The ceiling must be raised first. That is the principle this whole chapter is driving toward. It sounds simple enough that it might slip past you. Sit with the full weight of it. It means that adding more techniques to your practice without addressing the ceiling is like turning up the volume on a song playing in the wrong key. Louder is not better. It is just more of the wrong thing. Every vision board you build, every morning routine you perfect, every affirmation you speak, if the identity underneath it is still running the old file, you will hit the ceiling, reliably, on schedule, and you will explain it as bad luck, bad timing, or the universe testing you. Now here is what raising the ceiling actually requires. It does not require years of therapy, though therapy can be one of several tools. What it requires first is a single honest encounter with the story. The Troy method is this simple: trace the feeling, not the thought. Do not ask yourself what you believe about money. Ask yourself what you feel in your body when a large amount of money is mentioned in relation to you specifically. Not general money, your money. A specific number that feels like it belongs to someone else. Notice where the tightening happens. That tightness is the ceiling drawing its line. Then go looking for the story that built the line. Not because the story is an excuse, because the story is a data point that your nervous system is still using as current information. And data that is 30 years old should not be running your financial life in 2026. The update is not a new affirmation. The update is a new piece of evidence. One real, lived, physical piece of evidence that contradicts the old story. Troy's update came when he kept the $4,000 in place for 90 days and did not allow it to leave, regardless of the pressure to use it. Not easy. But the story that money passes through him lost a piece of its authority every week he held the line. His nervous system got new data. The ceiling moved. Further on, you will hear a point about how emotions relate to financial outcomes that cuts across the standard story. When that becomes clear, it alters the very action you take first each morning. But for now, the work is simpler and closer than that. Your ceiling is not your character. It is not your fate. It is data, and data can be updated. The frequency you are broadcasting right now is not fixed. It is just the most recent recording. The question is not whether you can change it. The question is whether you are willing to find where it was first recorded. Because the answer is already inside the first memory that came up when you read the word money just now. You noticed it. You moved past it. Go back. Chapter 7. The 17-second rule most teachers skip. Thinking less about what you want is one of the most direct paths to actually getting it. That sounds like an excuse to stop caring. It is not. It is a precise description of what happens inside your nervous system when you hold a desire with white-knuckled intensity versus when you hold it the way you hold a memory of something you already own. The distinction is not philosophical. It is measurable. And once you understand what fires in your brain during those two different states, you will never approach your morning the same way again. Here is the tension hiding inside that claim. If thinking less about what you want is the answer, why does every teacher, every vision board workshop, every motivational morning routine tell you to think about it more? Think about it longer. Write it down. Say it louder. Visualize it harder. The answer to that question sits at the center of this chapter. It will also explain something that has quietly been building since the first page of this book. Go back. That is what the last chapter left you with. Go back to the thing you noticed and moved past. That instruction was not decorative. It was a setup for what you are about to understand. What most people move past is the exact moment the signal changes. The split second when a genuine feeling of having flips back into the familiar ache of wanting. You probably know that feeling, that flicker. You were in it, and then something pulled you out and you told yourself it was close enough. It was not close enough. And the reason lives inside a window of 17 seconds. Marcus was 31 and 3 years into what he called his financial patience practice. He had read every book, done every visualization, kept a gratitude journal with the kind of religious consistency most people reserve for gym attendance in January. Every morning he would sit at the kitchen table in his apartment in Cleveland, close his eyes, and spend 20 minutes picturing the life he wanted. The clients, the account balance, the specific number with a comma in the right place. He was sincere. He was consistent. He was also, without knowing it, spending 20 minutes every morning soaking in the feeling that he did not have the thing he was trying to attract. He called it visualization. His nervous system called it confirmation that the gap was real. Marcus eventually met a woman named Clara at a workshop. She did something strange. She would set a timer on her phone for 17 seconds. Then she would close her eyes, and for those 17 seconds she would recall in specific sensory detail a moment when she had already felt exactly the way her goal would make her feel. Not the goal itself, the feeling. When the timer went off, she would open her eyes, stand up, and go about her day. That was her entire practice. 17 seconds. And she was not doing it 10 times. She was doing it twice. Marcus thought it sounded lazy. He also noticed over the following months that Clara was closing clients, and he was still writing in his gratitude journal about the clients he hoped to one day close. The difference between Marcus and Clara was not effort. Effort had nothing to do with it. The difference was the signal each of them was transmitting at the level of their nervous system during those morning minutes. Here is what the neuroscience actually says, stripped of the language that makes people roll their eyes. When you hold a coherent emotional state, a feeling that is specific, embodied, and not contradicted by a competing thought, your brain begins coordinating. The prefrontal cortex and the limbic system, which normally argue with each other the way siblings argue about the thermostat, start operating in sync. Heart rate variability shifts measurably within seconds of entering that state. Cortisol, the chemical your body releases when it perceives scarcity or threat, begins to drop. And here is the part most teachers skip entirely. 17 seconds is approximately the minimum duration required for an emotionally coherent thought to begin recruiting additional neural pathways. Your brain does not respond to a flash of feeling. It responds to a signal that holds long enough to register as worth amplifying. Below 17 seconds, the signal is noise. At 17 seconds, it starts to become a pattern. Every 17 seconds you maintain that coherent state, the recruiting effect does not add. It multiplies. Turn back to that earlier point and look clearly in the morning. What was the first thing you thought about when you opened your eyes? Was it money you did not have yet? A problem that had followed you into sleep? A number in an account that felt too small? If you are honest, the answer is probably yes. And here is the thing about that. You were not doing anything wrong by thinking it. You were doing something involuntary. Your brain was running a well-worn groove. A thought you think with feeling, especially a thought you think with the specific low-grade dread that comes with financial pressure, becomes infrastructure. It becomes the road your mind takes before you even realize you are driving. The 17-second protocol does not ask you to pretend the road is not there. It asks you to build a second road, 17 seconds at a time, until the new one is wide enough to choose. This is where the wanting versus having distinction becomes something you can actually use instead of just something you understand intellectually. Wanting, in the neurological sense, activates the dopamine-seeking circuitry. That circuitry is designed for pursuit. It is not designed for reception. When you spend 20 minutes visualizing a future you want, your brain is often running pursuit circuitry. That means it is coding the thing you want as not yet caught. The feeling beneath the vision is hunger. And hunger, repeated daily with focus and sincerity, trains your baseline signal to broadcast one message, over and over, more clearly than any affirmation can override it. That message is, I do not have it yet. Now consider the having state. Think of something you already own. Your phone, your favorite jacket, a specific meal you have eaten 100 times. Notice that when you think about those things, there is no ache. There is no striving. There is a settled, almost boring sense of familiarity. That settled feeling is the signal you are trying to generate in the direction of your goals. Not excitement, not longing, familiarity, the emotional texture of something that already belongs to you. Clara was not visualizing her future clients. She was remembering the feeling of a conversation that had already gone well. She was borrowing an existing neural signature, one her brain had already verified as real, and applying it to her current morning. Her brain did not need to believe anything new. It just needed to find the frequency it already knew. This is why the vision board built at age 24 is such a clean and uncomfortable piece of evidence. Every image on that board was genuinely desired. The apartment, the income, the freedom that comes from not watching the clock. The person who built it sat in front of it regularly, felt the wanting, reinforced the wanting, and broadcast the wanting at a consistent, focused frequency for months. And the images on that board with almost eerie precision did not arrive. Not because manifestation failed, because it worked exactly as designed. The signal was clear. The signal was wanting, and wanting delivered more of the conditions that produce wanting. The frequency of lack is not an accident. It is, in the cruelest irony, often the direct result of consistent, sincere, well-intentioned practice done in the wrong emotional register. The morning protocol built around 17 seconds corrects this at the source. Here is how it works in practice. It takes under 5 minutes. When you first wake, before you check your phone and before your mind runs its usual opening credits, sit upright. Both feet on the floor if you can manage it. Close your eyes and spend 30 seconds just noticing the physical sensation of being in your body. Not analyzing it, just noticing. This settles the baseline noise. Then bring to mind one specific memory of a moment when you felt financially safe. Not rich. Safe. Maybe it was a day when your account had a cushion and you bought something without doing mental math. Maybe it was a single afternoon when work felt easy and the money followed naturally. Find the sensory detail of that moment. What you were wearing, the quality of the light, the small physical feeling in your chest or your shoulders when the pressure was absent. Hold that image, hold that feeling. Now set 17 seconds in your mind and stay there. Do not reach forward into the future. Do not imagine more. Just inhabit that memory fully for 17 seconds, letting the body confirm that the feeling is real, that it has existed, that it is not invented. When 17 seconds have passed, do not immediately drop the feeling. Let it linger for another 17, and then another. You are not doing this for an hour. You are doing it for 3 cycles. 51 seconds of held, coherent, verified feeling. After the 3rd cycle, open your eyes. That is it. Before coffee, before email, before the first worry of the day has a chance to set the morning's emotional tone, you have already laid down a different road. Do this for 11 days without missing a morning. Track what you notice, not in the world around you, but in the quality of your thoughts during the rest of each day. The signal beneath the intention changes first. The circumstances tend to follow. But the internal shift is the early evidence that the protocol is working. One more thing before this chapter closes, and it connects directly back to the open question you may have been sitting with since the beginning. Why does every teacher tell you to think about what you want more, not less. Because wanting is where most teachers stop. They teach the desire without the frequency check. They teach the visualization without teaching you what emotional register to visualize from. The 17-second rule is not secret knowledge. It is documented, it is neurologically grounded, and it is sitting in plain sight in materials most people have read without reading carefully. Later in this book, you will encounter something that directly contradicts what most people believe about consistency in practice. After that clicks, it alters how often you actually show up for yourself. But right now, the thing to hold is this. 17 seconds of the right feeling is not a small thing. It is the minimum viable dose of a signal your brain takes seriously. What feeling are you broadcasting before your brain fully wakes up? Chapter 8. Inspired action is not optional. Something is leaving your life right now, and it is not dramatic about it. It does not announce itself. It does not send a warning. Every day you wait for a feeling to arrive before you move, the gap between where you are and where you could be widens. Too small to feel. Too large to ignore when you finally look back. The loss is not in the waiting itself. The loss is in what the waiting signals. While you practice patience, the version of your life that was possible 6 months ago has already become a version that requires more to reach. The compound cost of inaction is not a motivational phrase. It is arithmetic. Somewhere in the gap between what you have been taught about manifestation and what manifestation actually requires, there is a mechanism you have not been shown yet. This chapter is that mechanism. That question from the last chapter, what feeling are you broadcasting before your brain fully wakes up? That question was about signal. This one is about delivery. Knowing your signal matters. Cleaning your frequency. Getting honest about what you are actually broadcasting beneath the surface of your intentions. All of that work is real and necessary. But there is a piece of the picture that most manifestation teaching leaves out entirely. The leaving out of it is not accidental. It fits a certain story that feels comfortable. It lets you stay in the practice without ever doing anything uncomfortable. The piece that gets left out is this. The universe does not have a mailing address for someone who is standing still. Here is the open loop, and it will stay open for a while. There is a difference between inspired action and grinding action. Most people who have tried and failed at manifestation have done one of two things. They ground without inspiration and burned out, or they waited for inspiration and never moved. The distinction between those two things is the most practical spiritual insight in this entire book. It will be in your hands before this section wraps, but first, you need to feel the full weight of the trap. Picture the version of you waking up each morning in that chapter from 3 years ago as it really was, not in a general sense. Think about the specific apartment, the specific account balance, the specific Sunday night feeling in your chest before the week started. Now think about what you were doing in the space between wanting something different and getting something different. Were you moving? Were you waiting? Were you doing the morning routine, saying the affirmations, building the vision board, and then sitting down to the same day you had yesterday? There is no judgment in that question. It is just a question that most people, when they answer it honestly, find uncomfortable. The discomfort is important. Let it stay. Manifestation culture in its most popular form teaches desire as the primary fuel. You want something clearly enough. You feel it vividly enough. You hold it long enough and then it comes. The wanting is framed as the work. The feeling is framed as the doing. There is something real in that. Feeling states do shape what you notice, what you reach for, and what you allow yourself to accept. That part is true. But desire, by its very architecture, contains lack. To want something is to register that you do not have it yet. And when wanting becomes the dominant signal, the feeling you practice most consistently, you are broadcasting the absence of the thing with more power than you are broadcasting its presence. That is not a personal failure. It is a structural flaw in the teaching. Here is a parable. Her name was Dara. She was 29 years old, working a mid-level marketing job in a city that cost more than she made. She had a vision board. It was careful and detailed, a specific neighborhood, a number with a dollar sign in front of it, a photograph of a woman at a desk with windows behind her and light coming in from the left. Every morning Dara looked at it. She felt what it would feel like. She journaled. She cleared her limiting beliefs one layer at a time. For 11 months she did this. For 11 months, nothing outside her apartment moved. Then one afternoon, while she was on a call she almost canceled, a contact mentioned a small consulting project. It was not glamorous. It paid $300. Dara almost said no. Something in her said yes instead. She did the project. The client referred her to someone else. That someone else became a retainer. The retainer paid more in 4 months than her job paid in 6. 2 years later, Dara was working from an apartment in the neighborhood on the vision board. The desk had windows. Light came in from the left. She told people about the vision board and they called it manifestation. But what actually moved was that one phone call she almost canceled. One small action she almost did not take. The vision board did not deliver Dara her life. Dara delivered Dara her life. The vision board aimed her. The action moved her. That is the split that matters, that resets the entire frame. Vision is directional. Action is propulsive. You need both. A compass without legs gets you nowhere. Legs without a compass move in circles. Most people who are frustrated with either manifestation or hard work have been operating with one but not the other. Inspired action is not the same as grinding. This matters so much it needs its own space. Grinding is movement generated by fear, by force of will, by the belief that if you stop pushing, the whole thing collapses. Grinding feels like holding a door shut against pressure. It works for a while, and then it breaks you, and the thing you were holding comes through anyway. It costs you the clarity you need to recognize the right doors. It exhausts the very attention that inspired action depends on. Inspired action is different in its origin. It does not come from desperation. It does not come from the alarm in your chest telling you to do something, anything, right now. Inspired action comes from a quieter signal. It feels less like urgency and more like recognition. It feels like noticing a door you did not notice before and realizing it has been there the whole time. A pull rather than a push. And because it feels quieter, people trained in grinding often miss it entirely. They are too busy forcing to notice. But here is the problem with waiting for inspiration before you move. Inspiration is not a bus that arrives on a schedule. You cannot sit at the stop long enough and expect it to come to you. Inspired action is more like a current in a river. You have to be in the water before you can feel it pulling you anywhere. You have to move first. Then the inspiration refines the direction of the movement. This is where manifestation culture gets it exactly backward. It teaches you to wait until the feeling is right, until the alignment is perfect, until the signs appear and then act. But the signs often appear because you act. The alignment often clarifies because you moved. The feeling often arrives as a result of doing something, not as a prerequisite for it. The mechanism underneath this is simple. It is the revelation this chapter has been building toward. Manifestation without action is signal without antenna. You can broadcast the clearest, most coherent frequency in the world, But if you are not moving in physical space, there is nothing to receive what the signal is trying to deliver. The universe, whatever you believe about how it works, operates through mechanism. Opportunity moves through people. Money moves through transactions. Relationships move through contact. None of these things can reach you if you are sealed inside a practice that only requires you to feel and wait. You have to give the signal somewhere to land. The antenna is your action, not just any action. Consistent, directionally aligned, fear-lighter action that reflects the identity you are practicing inside the vision. When Dara took that phone call, she was not grinding. She was not forcing. She was practicing, in one small external movement, the version of herself who said yes to things that felt right instead of the version who waited until it felt safe. The action was small. The identity signal it sent was enormous. Here is what this means for you practically. You do not need to overhaul your calendar. You do not need to generate a blizzard of effort. You need one action today that is aligned with the outcome you are working toward. Not a comfortable action. Not a repetitive action you have already taken 100 times. A real one. One that costs you a little courage and asks you to behave like someone who already believes this is working. That is the entry point. That single action is not a strategy. It is a vote. You are voting, in physical reality, for the frequency you have been building in private. And that vote is what the signal needs to find you. Soon, you will hear a point about identity and worthiness that cuts across the standard story. Once you grasp that turn, it alters how you decide who you are allowed to become. For now, hold this. The vision is the direction. The feeling is the fuel. An action, specific, small, courage-costing, identity-reflecting action, is the only thing that closes the gap between what you are broadcasting and what you are actually living. Waiting is not a practice. It is a delay with a spiritual name. What is the one action you already know you have been calling inspiration, but have actually been calling fear? Chapter 9. Stop asking, start knowing. Every civilization that has ever risen and fallen left behind one common thread. Across every era, every culture, every tongue, there is a pattern. A small number of people moved through life as though they already belonged to the outcome they were building. Not because they were free of struggle, not because the road was clean and wide, but because something inside them had already settled the question before the answer arrived. They did not petition the universe. They corresponded with it. That single difference, that quiet interior distinction between asking and knowing, changed what they attracted, what they built, and who they became. That pattern is alive in you right now. Dormant but present. This chapter is not about motivation. It is about waking up the part of you that already knows how to receive. You left the last chapter with a hard question sitting in your chest. What is the one action you have been calling inspiration but have actually been calling fear? Hold that question. It matters. But right now, there is something older underneath it that needs your attention first. Think about the vision board. You may have heard this story earlier in the book, the board built at age 24, covered in pictures of a specific apartment, a specific income, a specific kind of freedom. For years, that board was offered as evidence that manifestation had failed. The apartment did not arrive on schedule. The income lagged by nearly a decade. The freedom felt like a promise that kept moving its own finish line. Proof, it seemed, that vision boards were decorations, not tools. Proof that wanting hard enough changed nothing. Here is where the story turns. The board did not fail. It worked with surgical precision on exactly the frequency it was broadcasting. Every morning, eyes on those images, the feeling underneath was not ownership. It was longing. The internal signal was not, "This is mine." The signal was, "I do not have this yet." And because that was the dominant signal, because that was the frequency running beneath every intention, life kept confirming it. Kept delivering more of that same feeling. More not yet, more almost, more wanting. That is not a design flaw in manifestation. That is manifestation functioning exactly as it should. What you want, you do not yet have. What you know, you already are. The distance between those two states is the only distance that matters. Now this chapter opens with one question still hanging in the air until the argument catches up with it. You have been taught probably many times in many formats to get clear on what you want. Write it down, feel it, visualize it. That instruction is not wrong, but it is incomplete in a way that costs you years. The question is not what you want. The question is what version of yourself is doing the wanting. The version who wants is always positioned slightly outside the thing. The version who knows is already inside it. Those are not the same person, and only one of them can receive what you are asking for. There is a woman named 𝗜𝗠𝗧𝗘. She spent 4 years building a freelance design business, working from a one-bedroom apartment in a mid-sized city, sending proposals every Monday morning. Every week she visualized the client list she wanted. She had a note on her bathroom mirror with a revenue number written in present tense, the way all the books told her to write it. "I earn $40,000 a month." She read it every morning. She believed in it, or she told herself she did. Still, month after month, the numbers hovered at 11, 12, sometimes 14,000. Close enough to keep her going, far enough to keep her hungry. One afternoon, 𝗜𝗠𝗧𝗘 got a project back from a client with minor revisions. Simple job, but something in the way the client wrote the feedback stopped her. The client wrote, "I trust your eye on this, whatever you think is right." 𝗜𝗠𝗧𝗘 sat there for a long time, because no one in 4 years had ever said that. She realized quietly and without drama that she had been running her entire business from a posture of proving herself. Every proposal written as a petition. Every revision accepted without negotiation. Every price point set just low enough to feel safe. She had been asking to be seen as credible, asking every single day. She stopped asking. She raised her rates by 40% the following week. She rewrote her proposals as recommendations, not offers. She stopped qualifying every sentence. Within 90 days, her monthly revenue had crossed 38,000. Nothing about her skill changed, only her frequency. Here is the mirror moment. Go back 3 years without cleaning it up, specifically the way you spoke about money and opportunity. Notice whether you were asking or knowing. Notice whether the words you used, even the private ones, the ones running underneath your real conversations, were the words of someone already there, or the words of someone hoping to get there someday. You do not have to answer out loud, but be honest, because the frequency you were running then is probably still running now. Slightly updated, slightly quieter, but structurally the same. Petitioner consciousness is not a character flaw. It is what desire-based manifestation culture trained you into. Want more, wish harder, ask bigger. And every single one of those instructions orients you toward a future state you have not yet entered. Every one of them reinforces the signal of lack. Every visualization done from longing broadcasts the same message. Every affirmation read from a place of disbelief whispers the same contradiction into the field. You are not attracting what you say. You are attracting what you are. So here is the revelation this whole book has been moving toward. The version of you who already has it does not ask. They decide. They act without internal contradiction. They do not send a proposal and then wait to see if they deserve the yes. They send a proposal because the yes is already assumed, And if it does not come, they move to the next one, unshaken. They do not visualize the apartment from the outside looking in. They visualize from inside it, already home, already arranging the furniture, already knowing where the light falls in the morning. The interior posture is not hope, it is recognition. You can practice that posture right now. Close your eyes if you are somewhere safe. Bring to mind the specific financial outcome you have been working toward, not the number in the abstract, the actual texture of the life around that number, the specific morning routine, the specific ease you feel making a purchase without calculating whether you can afford it, the specific way you sit in a conversation about money when you are not afraid of it. Now here is the shift. Stop looking at that life from the outside. Step into it. Become the version of yourself who already lives inside it. That version does not explain themselves. That version does not audition. That version simply operates from a baseline of knowing. The decisions they make, small ones, large ones, every single day, all flow from that baseline without contradiction. Stay there for a moment. Feel what that version of you already knows. Now bring that feeling back with you, not as a memory of a nice visualization, as a posture, as the way you re-enter every room. This brings the open loop closed. You have been taught to get clear on what you want. Now you know the more precise instruction. Get clear on who already has it and become that person in your interior life first, not as a performance, not as an affirmation you do not believe, as a settled, quiet, unargued knowing. The vision board worked. It always works. The only variable is the frequency beneath the image, and you have just changed yours. The question that asked what action you have been calling inspiration while actually calling fear, that question matters now in a different way. Because the version of you who already has what you are building does not call it fear. They call it the next obvious move. Stop asking for what is already yours. Chapter 10. The Mistake You Will Never Make Again. You have made it to the end of this book, and something in you already knows that is not quite the right way to say it. You did not just read 10 chapters. You sat with something uncomfortable and you kept going. That takes a specific kind of honesty, the kind most people avoid. So here is the question worth asking right now at the finish line that is actually a starting point. What changes today? Not next week. Not when the moment feels right. What changes in the next hour, in the way you carry yourself, in the signal you are broadcasting before your feet even hit the floor tomorrow morning? You have heard the principle. You have felt it click into place somewhere inside you. But there is a gap between understanding something and becoming it. This chapter is about closing that gap, not with a technique, not with another tool, with a decision so clean and so clear that you will look back on this moment a year from now and remember exactly where you were when you made it. That last line from the previous chapter is still sitting with you. Stop asking for what is already yours. Read it again without reading it. Let it land the way it was meant to land, not as instruction, as a correction. Because most of what you were taught about manifestation was built on a single error. The error was not that you wanted too much. The error was that you wanted it all. Wanting is the signal of absence. Wanting says the thing is over there and you are over here, and there is a distance between you and the life you are trying to build. Every vision board, every morning affirmation, every visualized check with your name on it, if it came from wanting, it confirmed the distance. It made the distance real. You already know about the vision board. The one built at 24, covered in pictures cut from magazines. The car. The apartment with big windows. The number in a bank account. You know how that story ends. Everything on that board arrived. It arrived on schedule, according to laws that do not care about your feelings, only your frequency. And the frequency underneath all that wanting was lack. The board worked perfectly. It delivered exactly what the signal said to deliver, which was the experience of wanting those things. Years of wanting, years of almost, years of the thing being just outside reach. The board was not a lie. The board was a mirror, and what it reflected back was the signal beneath the intention. Here is what that means for you, specifically, right now. Revisit the version of you waking up each morning in that chapter from 3 years ago as it really was. Not in terms of money or career, though that is part of it. Think about the feeling you woke up with most mornings. Was it the feeling of someone building something, or was it the feeling of someone waiting? Be honest. Nobody is listening but you. If the answer is waiting, that is not a failure. That is just the old frequency. It has a name now. It is the frequency of lack. And now that it has a name, you can catch it before it sets the tone for the day. Here is the open loop this chapter needs to close. Earlier in this book, you were told that the mistake is not in your vision. It is not in your goals. It is not even in your habits. The mistake lives one layer deeper than all of that. It lives in what you are when no one is watching, including yourself, when you are driving without music, when you are washing a dish, when you are sitting in a waiting room with nothing to look at. What is the hum underneath your life in those unguarded moments? That hum is your actual signal. That hum is what you are broadcasting. And now you know that is the thing you change, not by forcing a feeling, by choosing a state of being so consistently that the old hum eventually loses its frequency and fades. Manifestation is not something you do. That is the sentence this entire book has been building toward. Manifestation is what you are when you forget you are doing it. It is the state you occupy so naturally, so thoroughly, that you stop performing belief and start inhabiting it. The person who has does not visualize having. They simply are someone who has. That is not a small distinction. That is the entire thing. Marcus was a warehouse supervisor in a city he never planned to stay in. He spent 2 years doing every practice he had read about. Every technique, every morning routine, nothing moved. He told his sister one night that he felt like he was pushing a door that only opened from the other side. She said, "Stop pushing." He did not understand her at the time. 6 months later, he stopped the practices, not because he gave up, but because he got tired. He got tired of the performance of it. And in that tiredness, something relaxed inside him. He stopped carrying the weight of wanting. He started making decisions the way someone who expected things to work out would make them, not recklessly, carefully, but without the undertone of fear. Within a year, 3 things changed in his financial life that he had spent 2 years trying to force. None of them came the way he imagined. All of them came. He did not win because he stopped caring. He won because he stopped transmitting the frequency of lack. So here is the 30-day practice that closes this book. Not a ritual, not a visualization. A single daily question asked at the start of each morning before you check your phone, before you speak to anyone. What would today feel like if everything I need is already in motion? Not if I already had everything, if it is already in motion. That small distinction matters. It does not require you to pretend. It only asks you to consider the possibility that the machinery is already running, that the signal is already being received, that what is coming toward you is already on its way. Hold that feeling for 30 seconds. Then make your first decision of the day from that place. Not from fear of falling behind, not from hunger, from the calm, grounded certainty of someone whose direction is already set. Do that for 30 days and notice what your baseline shifts to. Notice what stops feeling urgent that used to feel desperate. Notice which rooms you walk into differently. Notice what other people seem to pick up from you without you saying anything. That is not magic. That is not mysticism. That is the frequency of having, replacing the frequency of lack, one morning at a time, until the new signal is simply who you are. The mistake you will never make again is not a technique mistake. It is not a discipline mistake. It is not even a belief mistake in the traditional sense. The mistake is letting the wanting be louder than the knowing. The wanting says not yet, the knowing says already. You have been trying to manifest from the wrong word. You are done with that word now. Everything is already in motion. You are the motion.